Not going to be very loud on this. It's pretty late here at the hotel. Don't know if I have any neighbors directly behind me. I know there's no room in front of me, but I just want to be respectful of the people around me and not get too hype. Anyhow, Brother Shotelco has posed us with a thought experiment. I think he knows by now that when he does that, we're going to get right into it. So let's do it. Brother Shotelco says that based on the content of this video, this is a good time for me to share my updated definition of what Black American is. I pose this as a thought experiment. Unfortunately for me, my field of study back in the day at an HBCU was science. I was taught that science is a systemic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the peer-reviewed testing of theories against the evidence obtained. Science is not emotionally based, nor does it rely on primal human superstitions. Considering that there is no such thing as race, grouping humans on melanin content or abstract one-drop rule, in all of science, race is a social construct created of the abstract to appeal to the most intellectually challenged in order to divide and control humans. Also important, in human behavioral science, it is accepted that social groups and ethnicities, which are peoples that share the same/similar customs, traditions, and shared cultural histories, can be viewed as a group or a subgroup. Thus, Black Americans can be best grouped by our shared history of ancestral slavery. For the most part, the only peoples in the world who self-identify and have fully accepted the label of Black given to them by the very dominant caste that subjugated and enslaved them are Americans of African slave ancestry. No other group of humans on the planet Earth self-describe themselves primarily by the color of their skin. Within this context, I submit, Blackness is actually an ideology. Factually, Blackness evolved from subjugated American slaves into an oppositional ideology of anti-white supremacy. What Black Americans have in common is a revulsion of living in a culture that believes Anglo-Europeans are biologically superior to those of non-European backgrounds. This theory is easily provable by examining European cultures that never participated in the North American slave trade or colonization. Examples include Switzerland, Sweden, Denmark, and Liechtenstein. 8% of Sweden is made up of African and Middle Eastern minorities. 38% of Switzerland is foreign-born, and about 9% would be considered Black by American standards. Switzerland has an incarceration rate of 70 people per 100,000 compared to the U.S. incarceration rate of 700 per 100,000. In the U.S., Black people are 14% of the population, yet almost 60% of the prison parole population. In Switzerland, the total Black population is about 300,000, or 3.5% of the population, and are about 5% of the prison population. There are a lot of other reasons for this overparticipation, but skin color is low on the list. Lastly, and this relates to the topic, I may have pointed this out before. If Black Americans ever got reparations for the generational damages of systemic racism in America, and let's say each Black American would share in 10 trillion, then each Black American, people who could prove their slave ancestry, would get about $250,000 each. But if anyone who has dark skin/complexion, regardless of their ancestry, were allowed to participate, then each Black American of bona fide and verifiable slave ancestry would only get $60,000. Let's play this out, shall we? Does anyone think for 1 nanosecond that Americans of true African slave ancestry would accept this? Hell no. And that will be 100% righteous and fair in compensating a damaged class of peoples. Would any real Black American reading this give up almost $200,000 in old reparations to any other American who happened to have dark or darker complexion, but no ancestral history of American slavery? Hell to the no. But now you must admit that neither VP Harris nor Barack Obama have zero trace of African slave ancestry. This means neither one is Black. So why do we claim these two ghouls are Black? They are not. They are just presented to the real Black masses as being Black by the same dominant caste monsters that will never ever even apologize for slavery, much less pay reparation damages. This is just another of my 1,724 reasons why there is no hope for 90% of real Black Americans. Brother Shotelco, you almost had me, man. You almost had me. I compare it to having to be somewhere that you gotta be for a long time, right? And you don't realize that you didn't charge your phone. So, you got like 10 minutes to charge your phone and it's on 30%. and you just watching it climb and watching it, and it hits 80% and 85%, and oh man, it might get to that 100%. That's the same way I was when I was reading this. I almost agreed 100% with you until the last paragraph. For one, let me thank you for yet another thought exercise. I really enjoyed responding to this. It was definitely interesting. And I think you're correct on the definition of Black American, and also correct on our willingness to call ourselves Black. But we got to get into that last paragraph. But now you have to admit that neither VP Harris nor Barack Obama have zero trace of African slave ancestry. This means neither one is Black. So why do we claim these two ghouls as Black? They are not. If I may, you have already explained, far better than I ever could, that we, Black Americans, did not give ourselves this designation. We merely adopted it. Therefore, we cannot give nor deny the designation for others. Our people acting like the gatekeepers of Black is no different than street gangs acting like they own the neighborhoods they rep. In both cases, if it were truly owned by us, the outcomes of both would be much different than they are today. From what I read, you accurately described the Black American, but you completely left out the existence of other Black people in America, the distinction being only the customs, traditions, and cultures, etc. that we derive from. But as you stated, and I agree, it's just an ideology. I now present to you my definition of Black people in America, which is much simpler, but not to be confused with Black American. To determine whether or not someone fits my definition of Black people in America, we'd have to answer a series of serious, though some outdated questions. And we can use someone like Barack Obama as the example in this, not to defend his Blackness, but rather to truly question whether or not his Blackness would apply the same. Would the pool have been drained after Obama swam in it in, say, 1960? And what side of the tracks would his family had to live on? Would Obama have been allowed to enjoy his lunch at the counter in a white establishment? Would he have been able to book the room that was denied Vester Foster's son when he was arriving in California as a migrant? Would a 14-year-old Obama have shared the same fate if he was the one that whistled at Carolyn Bryant rather than Emmett Till? Would Obama, white mother and all, have been looked at with a side eye walking through a Black function with a white woman on his arm? Would Dr. Umar call him a bunny hopper? Would he have been pulled over in the early 2000s if he was driving through the hood in a box Chevy that didn't have a light illuminating the license plate and asked to step out the vehicle and searched both body and vehicle on a traffic violation? I think we all know the answers to these questions. And if he or anyone else of his hue would have shared the same fate as an American of African slave ancestry, even though their lineage didn't endure the same hardships, why are we so hell-bent on making the distinction in how Black one is today? What are the qualifications of Black in America? How many niggers did you have to be called to qualify? How much money could your parents legally make? How many cousins did you have to have locked up? How many sleepovers did you have to have at your granny house? And how many people had to sleep in one bed? What's the acceptable kid-to-bedroom ratio? Did you have to live in a hood at some point? And did your hood apartment have to have rats or roaches? Is what E40 cousin said have to be true to qualify? What'd he say? Everybody got a gay or at least one dope fiend in their family. You ain't the only one with a reject in your family. Ooh. I just want to know, if there are certain hardships that one has to go through in order to qualify as Black, then Brother Shotelco, some may say, and it's certainly not me, that as somebody who has lived on 4 different continents by the time they were 13 years old, you're not qualified to question one's Blackness. As I've stated before, you don't have to claim your Blackness in America. America will claim it for you. Barack Obama, Kamala Harris are Black if America says they are. Now, there's not a definition of Black that I wouldn't fit into. My lineage not only comes from slavery, but North Carolina and Georgia are 2 of the original 13 colonies. I grew up in the hood, had roaches, no sleepovers at granny's house because I didn't grow up around my grannies. But all 3 of the boys, we slept in one room. Is a 3-to-1 room ratio acceptable? We had food stamps. Yeah, we bumped Bone Thugs first of the month. My step-pops gang-banged and sold drugs. I'm sure this qualifies as blackety black, but very little, if any of that, applies to my kids. Are they any less Black? Their mother's certainly Black. She has two black parents? You know, it's funny because I started listening to this book last Saturday when I was driving a group to Magic Mountain. It's called Sure, I'll Be Your Black Friend by Ben Philippe. It documents his journey, his thoughts, experiences, his emotions, etc., from being born a well-off child in Haiti who looks like everyone else to being raised just outside of Montreal, Canada, poor and one of the only black faces around, going to college at Columbia in New York to living off a stipend as a writer in Austin, Texas. He talks about being the black friend to the white friends and the black boyfriend to the white girlfriend growing up in Canada, to not being black enough for his black American friends at Columbia, getting quizzed on his blackness, having to pay someone else to take the swim test requirement to get his degree at Columbia, to being the black author in Austin whose writings always centered around a black fictional character, to being the black man who purposely sought out nonsense to fulfill this need for excitement in his life. Without listening to this book, I would never know that there were so many layers to being a black person in America. I've always only had to be myself to check every box of being black. So sure, we don't have to claim Barack or Kamala or Idris Elba or Rihanna or Joel Embiid or Nipsey Hussle, because it can't just be the ones we don't like, because they haven't faced what we faced. But then we have to answer truthfully. What exactly have we been through? Speaking of my age group, obviously. And what about that are they not subject to? Is our oppression so special to us that we feel privileged when denying others entry to it? That's my submission, man. Y'all let me know what y'all think about what Brother Shotelco wrote. Y'all let me know y'all opinions on what I wrote. Until next time,